Hi guys, and welcome to the Stephen King Sematary Club. Hi guys, we are wrapping up Cujo today. The sun has now set, so Donna and Tad have to sleep in the car. Donna is convinced that the Cambers are in the barn and that Cujo is eating their bodies. The next morning, Brett and Charity are at her sister's house. Brett wakes up, he's sleepwalking actually, he doesn't wake up, and he goes downstairs and he goes through the motions of feeding Cujo, and it gives Charity an uncomfortable feeling. And whenever we see Brett and Charity, they are kind of at odds with the situation where Brett is kind of feeling loyal to his dad, and he senses that Charity wants to parade this different type of lifestyle in front of him and tempt him with it, and he feels more comfortable with his father's lifestyle, and he is kind of pulling away from her and going toward his dad, and she is getting worried about it, which we know that Joe is dead, so she won't have to worry long. Donna is irritable and sharp with Tad, and he doesn't have a very big role in this book, but they're sitting in the car and she's like, you know what, we just have to wait until the mailman comes and then we'll be saved because he'll see something is amiss, we'll be able to get help. Joe had the foresight to call the post office and cancel his mail delivery. So he knew he was going to be out of town. He put his mail on hold, so there is no mail, so Donna and Tad are stuck for another whole day. Steve Kemp calls Vic's office to see if he got the letter. He's told that Vic's out of town on business, so he goes over to the Trentons' house. Donna's not there. He goes in through the back door, and he just destroys the house. He knocks things over, he stomps on things, he shatters things, he throws things. He makes the biggest mess, and he is just in this hissy fit of rage, and it's so immature and so annoying. And it makes you wonder what on earth she was thinking when she started hooking up with this guy. He leaves, and he's kind of concerned about how far he took things. Quote, like a school child who works carefully first with the pencil, then with the eraser, then with the pencil again, he tore down what had happened and then carefully rebuilt it, redrew it in his mind, until both the facts and his perception of the facts jibed in a way he could live with. Page 211. So we go back, Donna and Tad are still, trapped in the car. Cujo is jumping at the car door. He's launching himself. He keeps hitting it, and he's denting the car and bending the frame so that it's hard to open. He's a bloody mess. Don't understand how he could still be alive. Between the rabies, him not eating or drinking really, and all this exertion and damage he's causing himself. So Vic is worried. It's really late at night. He can't get a hold of Donna. He's in this hotel room. He's called her a few times. She has not answered. Donna decides to try for the front door. So she gets out of the car, heads around the car, and Cujo is lying in wait for her. He has played her. So she realizes that he's coming. He attacks her. He's biting her. She manages to get back in the car, and she is pushed into the car with Cujo on her, and he is just biting her and attacking her full frenzy, and she's slamming his head in the door, and it's not doing anything. Eventually he gives up. She knocks him out, and then Donna is justifiably freaked out by her bites because Cujo is rabid, or she's 99% convinced he's rabid, and she's struggling to remember what she knows about rabies and how fast it acts and what she needs to do. Now her leg is just probably totally useless in running anyway to get to the porch, and Cujo has planted himself between the car and the house anyway. He's just sitting there waiting, so she can't venture out. Vic calls the local police, and they send an officer out to his house, and the guy notices all the damage that Steve Kemp did. So Vic leaves his business trip and comes home. He meets up with Sheriff Bannerman, and they discuss all the possibilities, and they think that Steve Kemp is behind everything. They think that he trashed the place and he took Tad and Donna as hostages or something. They still haven't figured out where her car is, so Sheriff Bannerman goes out to the Camber's place because that was mentioned as a possibility that maybe she took it there to get fixed. He arrives, doesn't call the situation in when he finds the car, gets out, Cujo gets him. Cujo kills him. It disembowels him. It's really graphic, and Sheriff Bannerman is trying to go back to his police car and his intestines are actually coming out. And Donna jumps out of the car to distract Cujo, and Bannerman fails to make the radio call. So they're kind of back in the same position that they were in. So Vic decides that he's going to head out to the Camber's place just to check, just to ease his mind, because no one has heard from Bannerman. So Vic goes out there, and Tad is near death. Donna has stepped out of the car and is fighting with Cujo. She has found a baseball bat in the yard, and she is just hitting him and hitting him. And they fight for a long time. Finally, she kills him. And then she keeps hitting him. She keeps hitting him with the bat. Vic pulls in. He pulls her away from Cujo's body. He runs and he grabs Tad out of the car, and Tad is dead. Donna didn't know he was barely alive when she went out to do final battle with Cujo, and Tad has just died. And that is something that I appreciate that Stephen King did in the book. I think he really took a risk. I think it paid off. I think it was a good choice. Very depressing. But I hate that in the movie, spoiler, the kid lives. That's just something that I don't like the movie for that reason. Donna's in the hospital for about 4 weeks. She's getting rabies shots, and, you know, she and Vic just kind of try to move on with their lives. They are together. They're still together. He doesn't leave her over the Steve Kemp stuff, and, you know, you would think maybe the death of the child would cause enough of a rift that they would just go their separate ways, but it actually brings them closer together. Brett gets a new puppy. Cujo is cremated. And it says, quote, "It would perhaps not be amiss to point out that he had always tried to be a good dog." Page 318. And that just makes me sad. So my final thoughts on Cujo. I don't love this book because I have a hard time with the rabies, animal death. I feel so bad for Cujo. I'm such an animal lover. It's very reminiscent of the end of Old Yeller. I don't know, I feel horrible about Cujo, especially because it was such a preventable problem. It's mentioned when Brett gets his new puppy that the rabies and distemper shot was like $9. So it was just such a stupid oversight. And maybe rabies weren't a huge thing back then in the early 80s, but I just can't even imagine now. I can't imagine it. So anyway, I have a hard time with Cujo's death and his, you know, not wanting to be a bad boy, but you know, he couldn't help it. And I also just, I don't know, I don't really like any of the characters. I probably feel the most for Vic. But other than that, I just don't like most of them. And I find it to be kind of a dismal, depressing look at 3 or 4 families plus Steve Kemp. Yeah, I'm not a fan. I do love the execution of this story. I think everything is just so clockwork perfect. Like everything that can go wrong goes wrong, and the fact that Steve Kemp is such a red herring, and, you know, just every single factor that could go wrong goes wrong, and adds to the tension, adds to the shit sandwich that Donna and Tad are in the middle of. And it's just, obviously, you know, it's contrived because it's a book, but it's perfect. I do like that part of it. And, you know, the concept, the situation, very terrifying, very scary, very unlikely to happen nowadays with cell phones, but, you know, whatever. I think it worked well. I think it was a good premise. I love that Stephen King was not afraid to kill off Tad. It's so frustrating and so disappointing that it, you know, at the very last minute, Donna almost saves her kid and then it's too late. It's just a little bit too late, you know, that kind of thing. So I do recommend Cujo. It's just hard for me, being an animal lover, to get into it. And like I said, I just don't like the characters for the most part. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you like the ending. Let me know if you think Stephen King went too far killing the kid off. I do like that it's kind of shades of Gage Creed because he was also around that age. And I just like that nothing is off the table for Stephen King, which is another reason why I enjoyed The Other so much. And that is another book that I've reviewed on this channel. I did a little... It is filled with spoilers, so if you have not read it, don't watch my review of it. Have a spooky day.